In the year 2190, the Earth was dying, and humans were desperately searching for a new home. Since it was impossible to travel to a distant planet, they decided to settle on Europa, a moon of Jupiter in our own solar system. A spaceship named Pangaea was built for this mission, and it was the best of its kind. The journey was expected to take 10 long years. 4 brave humans, Jackie, Lisa, Captain John, and Dr. Richard, boarded the Pangaea, excited to embark on this historic adventure. The first 2 years of their journey went smoothly, and they were happy and healthy. However, things started to go wrong in the 3rd and 4th years. The crew members began to experience strange problems, such as nightmares, hallucinations, headaches, and fatigue. Despite these challenges, they were getting close to their destination, Europa. But in the 5th year, things took a dramatic turn. The crew's mental health began to deteriorate rapidly. They were struggling to cope with the isolation and confinement of the spaceship. The mission was in jeopardy, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The Pangaea was designed to serve as a refueling station for future spaceships, as it was not possible to build another ship capable of traveling such a long distance. This meant that the crew of Pangaea was truly on their own, with no hope of rescue or backup. The question on everyone's mind was, what would happen to them next? Would they be able to overcome their challenges and reach Europa, or would they be lost forever in space? Captain John, who was also romantically involved with Jackie, suddenly attacked her one day while she was sleeping. It was clear that he was not in control of his actions. Dr. Richard, who was responsible for the crew's health, conducted a thorough medical examination of everyone and reached a shocking conclusion. None of them were mentally fit to continue the mission. Richard's report was sent back to Earth, which sparked outrage among the crew. They felt that Richard had ruined their careers and that all their hard work had been for nothing. The crew would be replaced and they would be sent back home, which meant that the mission would be abandoned. Richard defended his decision, saying that he had done it to protect everyone's well-being, but the crew was furious. Meanwhile, the crew tried to send a message to the International Space Station, ISS, but couldn't get a signal. A few hours later, John felt a strong jolt on the spaceship, which seemed like a solar flare. Everyone was on high alert, but only Richard seemed to understand what was happening. John and the others couldn't find the source of the energy, but they soon discovered that one of their power cells had been destroyed. The incident had a profound impact on Lisa, who was deeply affected. John and Jackie started to notice that Richard was behaving strangely, staring out the window and refusing to talk to anyone. They tried to contact Earth again, but their attempts were unsuccessful. When the computer tried to locate Earth, it was as if the planet had vanished. Only Richard knew the truth, but he was keeping it to himself. As we jump forward in time, we find ourselves in a mysterious year. An old John is sitting alone on the spaceship, constantly scanning something on the computer. It's like he's searching for a clue, but what is he looking for? We'll have to wait and see. But let's go back to the present. Richard has finally recovered from a terrible experience. He's trying to help Lisa, who has a serious brain injury. Lisa is awake and talking, but Richard knows she needs surgery to survive. He tells John and Jackie that if they don't operate, Lisa will die. But there's a big risk she might not make it through the surgery. Richard thinks they should tell Lisa about the risks, but Jackie doesn't want to. John agrees with Richard, and they decide to do the surgery. As Richard gets ready to operate, Lisa starts bleeding badly from her ears and nose. Before Richard can do anything, she dies right there. John, Jackie, and Richard are devastated. They've lost a friend and companion. A week goes by, and they haven't heard from anyone. Not from the space station, not from Earth. The 3 of them are stuck on the spaceship, trying to figure out what to do next. They can't go back to Earth, and they can't go to Europa. They might not get any help. Jackie suggests that they take apart Station 1, which is made up of 2 huge parts. If they do this, they can make their life support system stronger. John asks how they'll do this, and Jackie says they'll have to blow up the bridge. This will separate Station 1 from their spaceship. But Richard laughs and says it's no use. He thinks the Earth has been destroyed. Jackie gets angry and says that's not true. She thinks there might be people alive on Earth, and they can try to reach them using the escape pods. But John doesn't want to take the risk. He thinks they should focus on staying alive. As they stand there trying to make a decision, the weight of their situation is crushing. They're running out of options, and they don't know what to do. Jackie had a daughter back on Earth, whom she had left behind. For the past 5 years, she had been missing her dearly. But now the unthinkable had happened. The Earth was destroyed in a blinding flash of light, leaving nothing but emptiness behind. John and Jackie were in denial, refusing to accept the truth that was staring them in the face. Deep down, they knew something was terribly wrong. Desperate for answers, John and Richard started reviewing the records to see what had actually happened. But Jackie couldn't take it anymore. She secretly put on a spacesuit and made a break for the escape pod, determined to return to Earth. John discovered her plan and tried to stop her, but it was too late. The escape pod was damaged earlier due to that jolts, and when Jackie opened the airlock, it separated from the spaceship. Jackie was left floating in space, but John managed to catch her with a rope and pull her back inside the ship. She remained unconscious for hours, and when she finally came to, Richard was speaking in a strange, ominous tone. "If she dies," he said, "only you and I will be left on this ship, and eventually there will be only one human being left alive in the entire universe." John was horrified by Richard's words, but he didn't lose his grip on reality like Richard seemed to be doing. After the incident, everything changed. Jackie was consumed by grief, constantly looking at her daughter's photo and crying. Richard, on the other hand, was descending into madness, talking to himself and making no sense. John was left to pick up the pieces, trying to figure out what to do next. He was trapped in a desperate situation with no clear way out. As the days passed, John and Jackie sat down to discuss their situation. Jackie suggested that they would have to separate Station 1 eventually if they wanted to survive for a long time. John proposed that if the Earth was truly gone, they should head to Europa, which was their only hope for survival. A spaceship had already delivered supplies to Europa, so they would have everything they needed to live. But before they made a decision, Jackie thought it was a good idea to ask Richard for his opinion. She walked into his cabin trying to sound optimistic. "Richard, we're thinking of separating Station 1. What do you think?" But Richard's response was far from encouraging. He looked at Jackie with a mix of sadness and hopelessness in his eyes. "You still think your daughter might be alive, don't you?" he said, his voice cracking. "You think you'll get to hug her again, but it's not possible. We're the last humans left, Jackie. There's no purpose to our lives anymore. We'll just float around in space until we die. That's the reality." Jackie felt a lump form in her throat as she listened to Richard's words. The next day, John visited Richard's cabin, hoping to have a conversation with him. But when he walked in, he was shocked to see Richard talking to himself. "Who are you talking to, Richard?" John asked, trying to sound calm. But Richard's response was heartbreaking. "I saw my wife," Richard said, his eyes welling up with tears. "She wants me to come to her." John knew that Richard's wife had passed away, and it was clear that the destruction of the Earth and the loss of billions of human lives had taken a toll on Richard's mental health. As John watched Richard break down, he realized that they were all struggling to come to terms with their situation. They were the last humans left in space, with no home to go back to and no hope of rescue. Later, Richard suddenly put on a spacesuit without telling anyone and ventured out of the spaceship. When Jackie and John discovered what he had done, they rushed to save him. But Richard was saying strange things, repeating that they were no longer important, that their existence had been erased, and that they would eventually die. As Jackie and John tried to reason with him, Richard's words became more and more desperate. He pleaded with them to save him, but it was too late. He had drifted too far away from the spaceship, and before their very eyes, he disappeared into the vastness of space. Now only two people were left on the Pangea spaceship, John and Jackie. They were consumed by worry and despair, and they decided that there was no hope of saving themselves. They would eventually go mad, and it was better to take their own lives than to bear the pain of their situation. Jackie handed John 2 pills, which would allow them to sleep forever, painlessly. But just as they were about to take the pills, a strange thing happened. They saw a shuttle approaching their ship. They canceled their plan and tried to contact the shuttle, but there was no response. John thought that the shuttle might be empty, but Jackie was convinced that there must be survivors on board. She argued that the shuttle wouldn't have reached their location if there was no one on board, and she was willing to take the risk to find out. John managed to board the shuttle, wearing a spacesuit, and found 3 people lying unconscious inside. Jackie and John quickly connected the shuttle to their spaceship, as the Pangea ship was designed to accommodate a shuttle attachment. They carefully transported the unconscious individuals to the medical bay on their ship. Jackie couldn't help but think that if Richard had only waited a bit longer, he could have helped treat these survivors. But fortunately, the 3 individuals regained consciousness and were overjoyed to have been rescued. They introduced themselves as Vincent, Thomas, and Diane, who had all worked on the International Space Station. Diane, it turned out, was the captain of the ISS. The crew of the Pangea spaceship was thrilled to have found survivors, and they were relieved to hear that their ship had not suffered significant significant damage. However, the news that the ISS had been completely destroyed was a stark reminder of the devastating reality of their situation. Diane explained that when they had lost all hope, they had set their course for the Pangaea spaceship, as it was their only remaining option. This confirmed the worst. The Earth had indeed been destroyed. The story jumps forward in time to an unknown year in the future, where an old John is alone on the spaceship, busy repairing something. He keeps catching glimpses of his former companions, and it's as if he's not alone. But then the story returns to the present. After eating some food, the condition of the ISS crew improves slightly. They start to discuss their situation, and one of them asks about the life support system. With 3 more people on board, they need to know if the spaceship can sustain them all. Jackie starts making calculations, and after a while she announces that if they separate Station 1 according to plan and ration their food and resources, they might be able to make it to Europa. Diane and her companions are overjoyed at the prospect of surviving, having lost all hope in the space shuttle. They celebrate, but later when Jackie rechecks her calculations, she discovers that even with reduced resource usage, the spaceship can only sustain 5 people for about a month. If there were only 2 people, it might be possible, but the ship can't support 5 people for more than 30 days. Jackie is devastated by this news. She shares her findings with John, and it's clear that she's still holding on to hope. Maybe she wishes she could go back to Earth, but the harsh reality is that there's no one left, and everything has been destroyed. She's still grieving the loss of her daughter, but she needs to come to terms with the fact that she's gone, along with the rest of humanity. John calls Diane over and asks her to share what she saw when she was on the ISS in front of Jackie. Diane recounts the horrific scene of the Earth's destruction and how it was the last message to them, warning them not to return, but to head towards Europa instead. The group sits down to discuss their situation, but the conversation quickly turns sour. Vincent becomes enraged and starts arguing with the others, but John tries to calm him down, explaining that Jackie made a mistake in her calculations. The implication is clear. Vincent, Thomas, and Diane will have to leave the spaceship, which means they will have to die. John and Jackie didn't want this outcome, but it seems inevitable. Vincent becomes uncontrollable, brandishing a knife and threatening the others. Diane tries to reason with him, but he attacks her and kills her. Then he and Thomas turn on John and Jackie, demanding that they separate Station 1 according to plan. But it soon becomes clear that Vincent intends to kill John and Jackie as well, so that he can control the Pangaea spaceship alone. A fierce fight breaks out, with John trying to stop Vincent. Thomas tries to strangle Jackie, but he's hesitant, and she takes advantage of the opportunity to kill him with a rod. After injuring John, Vincent makes his way to the bridge, where he tampers with the system, causing Jackie to become stranded on Station 1. John warns Vincent that if he blasts the station, they'll all be killed. For a moment, it seems like John's words are getting through to Vincent, but Vincent's madness takes over, and he presses the button. However, the blast doesn't happen, and they think they've been saved, but their relief is short-lived as a fire breaks out, engulfing the area. Station 1 separates from the Pangaea spaceship, taking Jackie with it. Vincent is injured by the flames, and John finally throws him out of the airlock. As Station 1 drifts away, John tries desperately to save Jackie, but it's too late. She's gone. The last words Jackie hears from John are his promise to do everything he can to find her and save her. Years go by, and John is consumed by his search for Jackie. He repairs the space shuttle and continues to search for her, with glimpses of the future showing up throughout his journey. Finally, after all these years, John finds Station 1. He prepares himself and boards the station in the shuttle. What he finds is heartbreaking. Jackie is sitting there, old and frail. John is overcome with emotion, and there are no words to express his feelings. This is where the story comes to an end.